A man in a worn work jacket sat down in an upscale restaurant and ordered the most expensive steak on the menu. When the waitress handed him a folded note moments later, the entire room held its breath. Marcus Chen didn't look like he belonged here, and that was exactly the point. He sat alone at table 12 of Meridian's, one of those sleek downtown restaurants with floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art on the walls, and prices that made most people wince. The kind of place where businessmen close million-dollar deals over wine that cost more than rent. But Marcus? He wore a tan work jacket over a faded plaid shirt. His boots had seen better days. His hair was slightly unkempt. He looked like a construction worker who'd wandered into the wrong restaurant by mistake. And the staff noticed. The hostess had hesitated before seating him. A waiter whispered to another. Even the manager, a sharp-dressed man standing near the bar with his arms crossed, watched Marcus with narrowed eyes, like he was waiting for a reason to ask him to leave. But Marcus didn't care. This wasn't his first time going undercover. Over the past 6 months, he'd been visiting high-end establishments across the city, dressed down, watching how people treated someone they assumed couldn't afford to be there. He was hunting for something. Or rather, someone who still treated people with dignity when there was nothing to gain from it. Marcus had built his empire, $2.3 billion worth, on a simple philosophy. Character reveals itself when people think no one important is watching. He didn't want polished executives or entitled heirs. He wanted people with integrity, the kind you can't fake. And tonight, watching the staff's barely concealed disgust, he wondered if he'd find it here. Then she approached his table. The waitress who approached his table moved with quiet professionalism, her posture perfect despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Her name tag read Elena. Mid-20s, dark hair pulled back into a sleek bun, wearing the restaurant's uniform with dignity. But Marcus could see it. The slight tremor in her hands, the dark circles carefully concealed with makeup, the tension in her jaw. "Good evening, sir," she said warmly, placing a leather-bound menu in front of him. Not a trace of judgment, not a flicker of condescension, just genuine courtesy. Behind her, Marcus noticed 3 men in expensive suits at the bar turned to look. The one in the center, mid-40s, slick-back hair, cold eyes, leaned in and whispered something to the others. They all stared at Marcus with barely concealed contempt. Marcus focused back on Elena. "I'll take your most expensive steak, however you recommend it." "The Wagyu ribeye," she said with small, professional smile. "Excellent choice." "Medium rare?" "Perfect." She nodded and headed toward the kitchen. But as she passed the bar, the manager intercepted her, pulling her aside roughly. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but he saw Elena's face tighten, saw her nod quickly, saw her hands ball into fists at her sides before she disappeared through the kitchen doors. Marcus knew what that conversation was about. He'd seen it a dozen times. Why did you seat him? He doesn't belong here. Get him out as quickly as possible. But Elena returned. She moved between tables with grace, refilling waters, checking on guests, never letting the pressure show. And when she brought Marcus a steak 15 minutes later, she set it down with the same care she'd given every other customer. "Your Wagyu ribeye, sir. Please let me know if there's anything else you need." As she set down the plate, her hand brushed against something, a small folded piece of paper, tucked discreetly under the edge of the dish. Marcus's instincts fired immediately. Elena's eyes met his for just a fraction of a second, and in that moment, Marcus saw it. Fear, desperation, and something else. Courage. "Enjoy your meal," she whispered. And then, as she turned to leave, she slipped a folded napkin under the edge of his plate. Marcus froze. He didn't reach for the note immediately. He cut into the steak, took a bite, maintained his cover. But his pulse was hammering. What was on that note? A warning? A plea? Years of reading people told him this wasn't a prank. Something was very, very wrong. Finally, with casual precision, he unfolded the paper beneath the table. The message was written in shaky pen. "The 3 men at the bar are planning to rob you in the parking lot. One has a gun. Please leave through the kitchen. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them. E." Marcus's blood turned ice cold. He didn't look toward the bar, didn't change his expression, just kept eating like nothing had happened. But his mind was racing at light speed. They thought he was an easy mark, a working-class guy who'd blown his paycheck on an expensive meal. They saw the worn jacket, the old boots, and figured he'd have cash in his wallet. No credit cards that could be traced. No security detail. No one who'd miss him if things went wrong. They'd targeted him. And this waitress, this brave, selfless woman, had just risked everything to warn a complete stranger. Marcus glanced subtly toward the bar. The three men were still there, nursing their drinks, pretending to have a normal conversation. But their body language told a different story. Tense shoulders, eyes that kept drifting to the exit. The one in the middle checked his watch twice in 30 seconds. They were waiting for him to leave. Marcus pulled out his phone under the table and sent a single text message to a contact labeled Only Security. 3 words, meridians. Now. 3. Then he stood up slowly, casually, and walked toward the restrooms. As he passed Elena, who was clearing a nearby table, he whispered without looking at her, "Follow me to the kitchen in 30 seconds." Her eyes widened, but she gave the tiniest nod. Marcus pushed through the kitchen doors. The heat and noise hit him. Cooks shouting orders, pans clattering, steam hissing. He moved to the side, out of the main workflow, and waited. 28 seconds later, Elena slipped through the doors, her face pale with terror. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You need to leave if they see you talking to me." "Elena, listen to me very carefully." Marcus's voice was calm but commanding. "I'm not who you think I am. I don't understand. How did you know about those men?" Her voice trembled. I overheard them. They were laughing about it, about how you look like easy money, how they'd wait for you in the parking structure. One of them showed the others a gun. Tears welled in her eyes. "I couldn't just let them. I couldn't." "You saved my life," Marcus said quietly. "And now I need to ask you something. Why would you risk your job, maybe even your safety, to warn a stranger?" Elena's lip quivered. "Because 3 months ago, my little brother was walking home from his shift at a grocery store. 3 men robbed him in an alley. He gave them everything, his wallet, his phone, everything. They shot him anyway." A tear rolled down her cheek. "The police said he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like his life didn't matter. Like no one could have done anything." Her voice broke. "I wasn't there to help him. But I was here tonight. And I won't let someone else's brother, someone else's son, get hurt when I could do something about it." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. This woman, this incredible, brave woman, she'd lost everything and still chose to save a stranger. "Elena," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "do you know who I am?" She shook her head, confused. "Should I?" Before Marcus could answer, the kitchen doors burst open. The manager stormed in, his face twisted with rage. "What the hell is going on here?" he barked. "Elena, get back on the floor. And you," he jabbed a finger at Marcus, "you need to pay your bill and leave. Now. We don't tolerate." "You don't tolerate what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice suddenly cold as steel. "People who don't look wealthy enough." The manager's face flushed red. "I don't have time for this. Security." But before anyone could move, the back door to the kitchen swung open, and 4 men in dark suits entered. They moved with military precision, fanning out to cover the room. One of them stepped forward, a tall man with an earpiece and an unmistakable air of authority. "Mr. Chun," he said calmly, "we've secured the 3 subjects in the parking structure. Local police are en route." The manager's face went from red to white in an instant. Elena looked between Marcus and the security team, her mind trying to process what was happening. Marcus turned to face the manager, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a man who'd built empires. "My name is Marcus Chun. I own Chun Dynamics. Perhaps you've heard of it." He let that sink in for a moment. "I also own a 60% stake in the Meridian Hospitality Group, which means I own this restaurant." Elena's face went pale. "Who are you?" Marcus turned to her, and for the first time that night, he smiled. "My name is Marcus Chun. I own Chun Dynamics. Maybe you've heard of it." Her jaw dropped. You're that Marcus Chen? Yeah, and you just saved my life. He glanced at the two-man. Get her somewhere safe. I'll handle Vince. Wait, what are you going to do? Marcus's smile faded, replaced by something colder, sharper. I'm going to make sure people like Dante Cross never touch anyone in this city again. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the lobby of a gleaming downtown office building, wearing a blazer that still felt surreal. Marcus had kept his word. He dismantled Dante Cross's operation with a single phone call to the FBI. Turns out, billionaires have friends in very high places. Vince Carello was behind bars. And Elena? She wasn't waiting tables anymore. She was a new director of the Chin Foundation's Detroit Community Initiative, overseeing a $50 million fund to help people like her, people who'd been beaten down by life but refused to stay down. Marcus walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. You ready? He asked. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. But this time they were different. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Marcus said quietly. You reminded me why I do this, why I look for people like you. Because when the world's burning down, there's still people who risk everything to do the right thing. Elena smiled, wiping her eyes. So, Marcus said, grinning, you hungry? I know a great steakhouse. She laughed, a real, full, unbroken laugh. Only if I'm not the one serving. And as they walked out into the Detroit sunlight, one thing was crystal clear. Sometimes, all it takes is one note, one moment of courage, and one person willing to believe in another to change everything.